Welcome to the Retail Insider video interview series. I'm your host, Craig Patterson, and we're joined here with three special guests today. This is the first time I've had this many on in a video. We're going to be talking about Zellers and its return, a bit of a Zellers 2.0 situation here. Now, for those that aren't familiar, which probably would be no one watching this at this point, but the Bay has brought back the Zellers brand. It disappeared as we know it basically about 10 years ago. This brand has been brought back as shop-in stores somewhere between 8 and 10,000 square feet, located within Hudson's Bay department stores in Canada. With this Zellers 2.0 relaunch, a few brands have brought in, including primarily a private label brand called Anko, which was developed for Kmart in Australia. Now, I'll introduce my three guests here. They're all experts in their own areas within the retail industry, but all are within the JC Williams group, being a very highly respected consultancy based in Toronto. We've got Lisa Hutchinson. She's the managing partner and a very well-known strategist within the retail industry. Welcome, Lisa.
Thanks for having me.
We've got John Torella. You're a senior advisor with the JC Williams group, and you're a marketing and branding specialist. Welcome, John.
Great to be here.
And Graham Human, you're a research and insights associate at JC Williams Group, and you work with strategic planning, all kinds of other stuff there. Welcome, Graham.
Thank you, Craig. Looking forward to the conversation.
Now let's dive into it here. We're going to talk a little bit about Zellers. Now, Lisa and Graham, I know that you had an opportunity to visit the Scarborough Town Center location, and you've been poking around a little bit to have a look at what's in this Zellers here. Let's talk about your experiences so far and what you think of the brand.
Yeah, we were there for the opening day. The opening fanfare was quite a show. It was quite a sight. I will say the marketing folks have done an amazing job. They've done a great job in terms of, I've been following them on Instagram for a couple of weeks, watching what's happening. There's definitely been the curiosity and a fun level, and it was not let down. We came into the shopping center before the store opened, and we could hear the DJ going. It helped us figure out which direction we were going. We heard the DJ going. Then, there was a lineup and lots of excitement. They had a marching band march everybody into the store, which was helpful because it was a bit difficult to find after we went up another level on an escalator and then taken back to the back of the store where it was positioned, which we thought was a bit unusual, tucked back between lingerie and furniture. But once we were back there, it was really well branded. It certainly had a well merchandised, and we thought that the department was well laid out. And so that was our first impressions as we started to dig around, and then our retail, we started to go in sort of a little bit more with our critical eye in terms of the product. And as you mentioned, it's pretty much, in my guesstimate, about 80% of the Anko private label, which is, as we know, is the Kmart private label product. So the majority of it was that. But that didn't seem to be stopping the shoppers. People were picking up products. There was definitely a demographic that was older that was really playing off the nostalgia. And they were, having the fun with it and picking it up. We didn't see as many young people. The young people that we did see would be, some moms and babies, and shopping in the toy department and the baby department. And then lots of people making purchases. Again, one of the downsides was that there was no dedicated point of sale, and there was no Zellers bags. So people were leaving with HBC bags or the Bay bags. But definitely lots of excitement. People were in there, and that's sort of my first impressions. Graham has a different eye and a different understanding and history with Zellers, so I'll let him chime in.
And I wanted to bring up as well, Graham, you're a little bit younger than us, so I'm curious what you think of, for example, the Anko products, because I think you're in your 20s. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, I am.
Let's talk about that as well, because again, I'm just curious what do younger people think of the brand, because again, I'm a couple decades older. So, I know the old Zellers and what it was like. I remember the Truly brand, and it was truly not amazing. But tell us what you're thinking about what you saw at the new Zellers.
Well, it was definitely very aesthetically pleasing. The brand, it was very well laid out. The visual merchandisers at the team at Zellers did a great job of laying it out, and the product was definitely design oriented. Um, I can't say whether or not, because we didn't purchase any, how it would hold up over time from a quality standpoint, but it was definitely very visually appealing. It definitely played into the younger demographic as far as design, color palette, things like that. But the one thing is, it, to my recollection, doesn't really have any of that nostalgia they're playing off of. It doesn't attribute much to the Zellers branding as it was from 2013 and before. So I never thought of Zellers as sort of a place to go to get the trendy new item, and now that seems to be where they're moving. So and you know, one of the things that we have to give them kudos for is the Zellers branded clothing. I mean, that was flying off the shelves while we were there, and that was not demographic specific. That was, you know, people from older generations to buying little clothes for their babies. It was all flying off the shelves while we were there.
I think the hoodies have sold out, the red Zellers hoodies. I wore one when I was teaching a class recently.
Yeah, so then I followed up with a visit to Erin Mills on the second day of their opening. You know, having seen all the fanfare of one, I wanted to go and see maybe something a little bit more typical. You know, the second day, a little later in the day, certainly still very busy. Still a lineup, but it was at a central cash point. And so, you know, there was it's hard to tell. I was trying to distinguish whether it was you know, Zellers products only, or were there other Bay products in there? And so that was difficult to tell, but there was definitely a long lineup, and typically the Bay stores don't have long lineups, so I think that has an impact on it. But the red hoodie was completely sold out at that location when I was there, and there was lots of product that was sold out there. And so I don't know if that was an out of stock, or there just wasn't a team dedicated to doing the replenishment on the weekend.
Yeah, I've been told it's hard to get everywhere. It's not just in Toronto, so they may have run out everywhere, including online. I mean, I don't even know if it's online. Now, John Torella, you're a senior advisor, of course, at JC Williams Group. Tell me a little bit about your just general impressions of this new Zellers, the branding and how the marketing is coming about, and what Zellers is going to need to be doing, and I guess the Hudson's Bay Company as a parent company, and to maintain a success longer term. Because right now it seems like nostalgia and buzz are, you know, really propelling this popularity for this new Zellers concept, at least as we're still in the first week of it being in existence to the public.
Well, Craig, you know, my sense is that while the Zellers plan may add some hype and some sales and certainly some traffic, that HBC's issues are much bigger and greater. And, you know, my storyline now with all my buddies is the Zellers plan is like shuffling chairs on the deck of the Titanic. That if the Bay doesn't really deal with the fundamental issues, like what's the compelling competitive advantage? What's their point of difference? What's their USP? What's their value proposition? Whatever you want to call it, it'll be really hard to define it in any competitive way. You know, if you look at the brand, and you guys are all using brand, that's brands as logos and graphics, but my definition of brand is much deeper than that. So it's how are you distinctive? How are you unique? How are you special? Brands have to be distinctive in their look and feel at every touch point, online, in store. Most of all, they have to be relevant to the new norms and the new realities. This is a different world. And they have to be sustainable, not just in the short term, but long term, the infinite view. So if I had to boil all that garble down, it's no noble purpose beyond profit. And that's not going to fly.
What about the Anko product itself? This is a question for well, anyone and anyone on this small panel that we have here. Like we mentioned before, this is a line that's been brought in from Australia, and it was developed by Kmart specifically for, I believe, the Australian and the New Zealand markets. Now, those in the United States may remember Anko coming in. It had a few stores in the Seattle area as well, but that was only from about 2018 until just after the pandemic, which disrupted a lot of retail, and these stores unfortunately shut down. But let's talk a bit about the Anko line itself. It's really inexpensive, at least for the most part. The design is quite modern, not what we remember from Zellers, at least from the modern part. We remember the prices.
Yeah, I think
Craig,
that's what.
just to jump in on one of the things I talk about, the new norms, the new realities. Well, one of the new realities is that it goes beyond product and service. We're really in the era of experience. And so while I may be intrigued by the product, one off here and there and so on, if I'm going to build any kind of loyalty, particularly with the younger customer, then there's got to be an experience in there, and it's got to be an emotional experience. There's got to be some relevant. I've got to have some sense of belonging, some simpatico with that brand, or it's not going to last.
Yeah, and I think to your point as well, Craig, is like I think Graham was touching on that in terms of is the customer looking for this more modern, refreshed brand, and it being Anko, and so I guess we first learned of it partly with our Australian partner had posted an article about Anko making sharing that they were going to be the partner for a Canadian brand to open in later this month, which two and two together is Zellers. So is it a Zellers brand, or is it just a Zellers department, and bring back some of the values that Zellers is or the department is playing on? There is this economic need right now for there is some space right now for an economic value-based retailer, and there is space within the Hudson Bay stores. And is this an opportunity to fill that space, partner with somebody that's got a brand that might be, and some product that's able to fill this opportunity and the space within the store?
I think to speak to the pricing, what has been touched on is that when we were originally talking about it, we were sort of comparing it to the pricing that was being seen at Kmart Australia for the Anko product, and that's there's not a ton of relevancy to the Canadian consumer. But with Zellers specifically, with their lowest price is the law as part of their nostalgia, when we actually compare similar products from a Walmart, or if it's a product that can be bought in bulk, comparing it to a Costco, they aren't necessarily going to be the least expensive. So, they're not the least expensive, but they're also not the trendiest as far as even what John was saying with a noble purpose, right? They're not the most purpose driven, but they're also not the least expensive. So they're kind of putting themselves into an awkward position with little differentiation, I think.
One thing to note too,
the
the $175 chair by Anko at Zellers here in Canada, I think in Australia is 79 Australian dollars in terms of if we want to talk about some pricing. I don't know about other prices, but this was brought to my attention by a reader. I talked to all kinds of people, and this was something that they were comparing. It's $175 still isn't a lot of money for a chair. Things are expensive in Canada, but things are expensive in Australia as well, and $79 is a pretty good price, and the dollar between Australia and Canada are not that far off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we noticed the same thing when we did some price checking.
I also see a basic flaw in their strategy of nostalgia, because on one hand they're saying, hey, nostalgia, memories, all of that. remembering and belonging of the past. But then on the other hand, their senior executives are saying their focus is on a younger customer, and that's what they really want to get. So, the nostalgia thing just doesn't work with that younger customer.
And speaking of
And is
nostalgia,
nostalgia a strategy?
now, speaking of nostalgia, what Zellers has done is it did not bring back the full size or full service restaurants that the stores were known for. I'm actually sometimes questioning whether or not, I've said this in a previous podcast that we are putting out, that maybe they should have started with restaurants if that was feasible in terms of the kitchen facilities and had some sort of Zellers merchandise. But nevertheless, what we've got now is food trucks driving around the country with, I think, 5 of the menu items that had been originally at Zellers or similar to it anyways. But do you think that the food truck strategy is, and this is again a question for everyone, if the food truck strategy that Zellers has brought forward is going to be successful, and will this even bring people into the stores, or are they just going to get their grilled cheese sandwiches and run?
The problem with it, Craig, is it's one dimensional. I mean, if you're really going to develop this Zellers brand, then you need a full Marcom plan, a marketing, communications, branding plan, both online and virtual and in store. It has to have both traditional media, certainly the most effective traditional retail media, flyers and promotion and events and activities. It has to have consistency. So, the food truck is a kind of clever, unique, buzzy idea. But where is the Marcom plan? Because if I go back and, my reference to the Bay, where's the Bay marketing plan? Where's the excitement of the past with Bay Day, the hike? Remember Bonnie Brooks and her use on TV? Where is there? There's no semblance of any thought in any of that.
Um, I I guess the thing with the restaurant, and I think that's cool, a cool idea in terms of the restaurant with some Zellers product. Um, I guess to me with the food trucks, and we didn't get to try anything because it was pouring rain, and they were trying to keep people dry and keep a tent down to try and figure out how people could come, and then it wasn't there on the Sunday when I was there. It all feels a little pop-up to me. I think and we're all about testing. Believe me, we believe in testing and whatnot, but it does feel a bit pop up. It feels like the location in the stores. There was no big construction requirements. It was just emptying, 8,000 square feet or whatever that space was, and moving in some sort of off the racks, if you will, some generic fixtures with signage. And similarly with these food trucks, they're not a temporary thing, a permanent thing. So it feels a bit, like it's testing and a work in progress, and which is nothing wrong with that. But to your question about the food trucks bringing people in is where they're positioned is not even near the Zellers, so they're just out in the parking lot. So yeah, will it bring some, maybe it's a great way for people to come and, park at the food truck and then go into the store. And it's just another way to drive some traffic. And, let's face it, in the shopping centers, the outside of the department stores, any of the department stores needs some animation. And so maybe this is the solution for them to come in those entrances, is to have the food truck there.
It's too one-off. It's not enough substance. To me, it just, as you say, it's a kind of pop-up, and everybody's excited about it. But where will we be, in the deep dark days of August? What are they going to have going on then? How are they going to launch fall? And what's Christmas going to be like? And where's the annual plan? How committed is the staff into this thing? I mean, these are the essence of retail, and you can't just do it with one-off hype.
And I think what you said, John, about where will we be in August is an interesting question for the food truck specifically, because I think the idea, the beauty of the food truck is the fact that it's mobile. And obviously for this time being to have it in front of the store makes sense, but it'll be interesting to see how they use it as a touch point for the brand and maybe expand it. And with having the ability to go to food truck festivals or to be able to go to music festivals or try to activate spaces that they aren't in right now, because maybe it will drive traffic to the store, but ideally, I mean, it'll still create some buzz around the brand if they do show up to different events, right? So, I mean, maybe not a good strategy for holiday, but could be a great one as they're moving through summer.
Very interesting.
true.
Now, there's been some chatter around maybe someday Zellers opening full-size stores or at least standalone units. We don't know how big those would be yet. Probably not as large as the old Zellers stores, just because you need a lot of stuff to put in them. Do you think that this would be a concept from what you've seen so far with this Zellers 2.0 relaunch that would possibly see success with something that would be larger? Or do you think maybe the Hudson's Bay Company wants to utilize these smaller units to drive traffic into existing Hudson's Bay department stores?
Where are you going to put your money, Craig? Walmart or a full-line Zellers store? Where are you going to put your money against
Walmart.
Winners? Where are you going to put your money against Dollarama? Come on. I mean, again, it's just this shuffling the chairs. It's the current. They have gone through 5 presidents in the last 6 years. Each one of them came with their hot idea. Well, we'll see.
Yeah, I guess I kind of thought that we were going to see it more isolated. Again, we were kind of surprised when we went in and had to make our way through the store. And is that part of the strategy to make people go through the store and maybe buy some other products, or is part of one of the tactics, I should say, to make people go through the store? I was
Don't make
sort of,
people do anything. Don't make them do it.
and
Create
I
a
was,
want, a desire,
yeah.
That's what you want.
I was expecting it to see kind of like the locations of the top shops, a corner, an exterior corner of the store with big exterior signage. I was surprised to be having to make my way through the store to a department. So, I think if there's a future, it is either carved off some of the existing store or it's a standalone. But to keep it just as a department, should it just be to be a multi-department within the department store? What's it taking from in terms of its other the rest of the store's assortment?
I think the other thing to add is that there's going to be different, there are different departments already existing and people having these stores within a stores. I mean, I agree with what Lisa said, that I was expecting it to be more of like we saw with the Mech at Yorkdale. I mean, obviously they put Mechs into numerous locations, but the one in Yorkdale is really prominent, and frontage right into the mall, but with a small red sign in front of the store doesn't have as much of a draw. And yeah, I mean, moving that a small assortment they have currently into a full line store would be a lot of work.
It makes sense. It makes sense. Now, this Anko line, the prices are good, and it's got different categories that you also find within that host Hudson's Bay store. Is Zellers competing directly with its host store, the Bay?
Yeah, I think in some ways they certainly are. And, I think they've moved out some of the departments that they do compete with to make some space. But for sure, I think that, you've got children's wear, in Scarborough, they do have a children's wear department downstairs. And then, up in the Zellers department, they also have children's wear. So, at some point, are they just competing with themselves, is what you're saying? And I think the short answer is yes. And by keeping it as a department within the store, that's my opinion.
I think one of the other things that they're definitely competing with is, cannibalizing their own e-commerce, right? I mean, they already had this marketplace concept where you had some opportunity to bring in some lower cost options from whatever vendors were interested at hosting with the Bay. So, some of those people might find a lot of competition in some of those Anko products that are lower priced. And now there's marketplace products in the Zellers e-commerce assortment. So it will be really interesting to see how they decide where they're going to be placing it with a separate website. It starts to get a little fuzzy as to where I'm buying my product.
And I've got one final question here. This is a general question. What do you think is the future of the department store generally, say in North America and globally, because there are different types and different examples around the world? I should probably start with you, John, because I know you've done some traveling and you got to look at some of these department stores around the world. Certainly before the pandemic, you were traveling quite a bit.
Yeah, and as I travel around the world and look at department stores, that's almost always my first visit. What I'm struck by is just the joyfulness, the exuberance, the excitement, the experience of it all, the sense of belonging when you're in there, the people. And it's back to my point, today it's not just about the products you have. It's not just about the service you have. It's the emotional connection that you make with that customer where they feel a sense of, hey, there's a store for me. There's a store that's going to help me, in my joy of life, my family, my home. If it's not that, who needs it? I mean, there's all kinds of specialists. So you better be pretty special. You better be pretty unique. You better be pretty distinctive, and you'll make it. But if you're not, you're doomed.
I was just going to share an example that John shared with us because he spent Christmas in Paris. So he had a magical experience in Paris.
When you walked in, the staff was there. You were greeted. Can I help you? Go up to the food floor. I mean, these incredible food floors. The Japanese, you just see every expression of the food culture, the excitement, the sporting goods, so as I say, it just restored my faith in the department store business. But it's got to be, it's gonna knock your socks off.
I think for me, the challenge continues to be, the density of the population base in Canada. I think that there is a space for them, but to John's point, there are lessons to be learned. As Craig, we get to travel to meet with our international partners. Graham and I just got back from Germany, and I was in Poland in the fall. And, there are some amazing department stores in these European countries, and they certainly are doing it well. But they also don't oversaturate. And, we saw this great outdoor retailer called Globetrotter in Cologne. And while it's not a department store per se, but it is a huge format outdoor retailer, they have people that drive 2 hours, 4 hours, that drive to come and shop in this store. And they stay for 2 hours because it's experiential. And, when you think about these other really successful department stores, there's the service element and there's all that experience. And I just find our department stores are lacking that. And there's definitely this lifestyle opportunity. And so I think that there is still a lifeline for department stores, but I think they have to change. And I think we don't need as many of them. I think they need to be a destination.
I think mine was to kind of combine what both John and Lisa said, is that really, we spend a lot of time at JCWG thinking about this noble purpose. And I think a lot of these department stores have really lost that essence. I mean, if you look at our most recent exit of Nordstrom, right, their service excellence didn't translate to Canada once they got past the 6-month mark and started to really run into some issues. So another store we visited that again wasn't a department store, but one of the sales associates was so excited to show our group around, and had so much product knowledge and endlessly passionate about the brand that they were representing. And we aren't getting that out of our department stores. So I think this idea of these global brands that shop the world for you and bring in these products and know everything about it and can easily talk about it and make you fall in love with it as well is what's the future, but what's currently lacking.
Now, Graham, as someone in your 20s, do you shop at department stores, or are you a fan?
I'm a fan of the right ones, I think. It really, like I said, I mean, you need to have a reason to shop there. I mean, if I'm shopping for a certain brand, a lot of the time, one, I could either get it online, or two, they might have an actual boutique, right, somewhere in the vicinity. Or if I'm looking for a specific brand, there's also a lot of small retailers who have a deeper connection with them that will get it. I mean, Nordstrom lost its glamour over the years, as well as the Hudson's Bay and Saks. I mean, we're right downtown Toronto, so the options we have for department stores are few and far between for somewhere with a great experience.
Craig, if you want to see the model for the department store of the future, go to China and look at the ecosystem the Chinese department stores are building. So they're not just selling you product. They build up enough data. They know more about you than you know about yourself. They're going to take you on a holiday. They're going to do your insurance for you. They're going to help you buy a car. They're going to teach your kids about education. So this ecosystem of information, data, is giving them a real sense of knowing that customer, not from a demographic, but from a real persona point of view. And to me, if I were looking at department store of the future, that would be my start.
That is fascinating. This is something we should look at more in another segment, because I want to dive a little bit more into the future of the department store generally. It's something that I've been passionate about. I'm old enough to remember when there were lots of department stores in North America with all kinds of different names, particularly in the United States. That is almost not the case anymore, unfortunately. We've seen the death of the local department store, again, primarily in the United States, but in Canada, of course, we've lost Eden's, Woodward's, Simpson's, Morgan's, and a few others as well. So I lament those losses, but at the same time, the world is changing as well. So I want to say thank you so much, all three of you, for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
This has been Lisa Hutchinson. She's the managing partner and strategist at JC Williams Group. John Torella, you're a senior advisor. You're a marketing and branding specialist. Of course, we've spoken to you before. And Graham Human, you're a research and insights associate with JC Williams Group. Again, thank you so much for joining us today here on the Retail Insider video interview series. I'm your host today, Craig Patterson. I'm the founder and CEO of Retail Insider Media Limited. This has been the Retail Insider video interview series. Thank you so much for watching or listening on the podcast channel, if that's how you're listening to us here today. Thank you so much again. Take care and bye for now.